So this is 5.6 part B. We're just going to finish the notes. So first question is, what does I equal? Square root of -1. What does I squared equal? -1. Those are the big two that you really, really need to remember. These two right here. Okay? Yeah. So what we're doing today, yesterday was just simplifying. Today is actually going to be adding, subtracting, multiplying, and solving with complex numbers. Those are the numbers that have the i's. So first we will be adding. And to add, it's pretty simple. You just have to combine like terms. So they have parentheses here because technically this is a complex number and this is a complex number. But the parentheses really don't make a difference as far as operations. So if it's easier for you to look at, you can rewrite it without parentheses. And we're just going to combine our like terms. So what real numbers can we combine?
3 and 6.
3 and 6, they make 9. What imaginary numbers can we combine? 4i minus 9i, which makes -5i, and that's your answer. Make sure you write it with a real number and then the imaginary. Adding, okay? All right with that? So subtracting, it's very similar except that we are going to first distribute our negative and then we will combine like terms. All right. So for this one, we got to distribute the negative, and you're always going to have to distribute it to what's behind. So that negative, I didn't leave enough room. My negative will go to my 11 and the -3i. So that makes -6 plus 4i minus 11 plus 3i because of that double negative. Now combine like terms. We get -17 plus 7i. And there's your answer. Real numbers first and then imaginaries. We okay with that? Next part is multiplying, which we are going to, when set up like this, we are going to distribute, and when there are two binomials like this, that is called FOIL. So for our first terms, we're going to take the 3 and the 6, multiply them together. 3 times 6. And then we add outside terms, which are 3 times -9i. And then write plus, and we go get our inside terms, which are 4i times 6. And then we add the last terms multiplied together, which are 4i and -9i. Any questions on foiling? Yes.
Are they supposed to be in the same parentheses?
Haha, they're supposed to be that one.
Yeah.
Good question. That looked weird. Yeah, 3 times 6. All right, so let's simplify this now. So 3 times 6 gives me 18. What is 3 and negative 9i? Negative 27i. 4i and 6 multiplied is 24i. And then 4i and negative 9i. Negative 36. What's I times I? I squared.
Ooh, tricky.
Tricky, yes. I times I is I squared. Aha, Alicia. Very good. So anytime you see I squared, you must replace it with negative 1. That is key, and so many people forget to do that. Anytime you see I squared, replace it with negative 1. Make a giant note about that. Okay, because negative 1 is much easier to deal with than I squared. So let's kind of combine that with adding like terms. So we get 18, and then what's negative 27i and positive 24i?
3i.
Negative 3i. Okay, and then negative 36 times negative 1. I just replaced my I squared with negative 1. And so that makes it what, Osmar? Positive 36. So I get 18 minus 3i plus 36. What's 18 and 36 put together? 54 minus 3i. And that is your answer. So always replace I squared with negative 1. That's why I started that in, or around it. Any questions on distributing? No? We're good? We like FOIL? Okay. Then y'all ready to keep going? So our last chunk of problems here are actually solving systems with complex solutions. So we have an equation with an equal sign and numbers, and we are going to solve for x. And since it says with complex solutions, we're probably going to get i's in our answers. So how would we start this out here to try to get x by itself?
Minus 25.
Minus 25. So that gives us x squared equals negative 25. How do we get rid of the squared? Square root both sides. What are you left with after you do that? Well, what's square root of negative 25? Yes, Paul? 5i is correct. If you remember, that's what we did yesterday. So we said like that's equal to square root of 25 times square root of negative 1. And the square root of negative 1 gave us the I, square root of 25 gave us the 5. Now, there's one thing we've forgotten. Well, it's kind of two things combined in one. What happens when we square root both sides? You have to write something in. The plus minus. We need a plus minus. So we actually have two answers here. Positive 5i and negative 5i.
Dude, that's what got me on the freaking test.
Yeah. Anytime you square root both sides, you have to write in plus minus. We good? All right, let's go to the next one. How do you want to start it? Subtract 32. So we get 2x squared equals negative 32. Now what? Divide by 2. Divide by 2. X squared equals negative 16 is correct. Now what?
Square root.
Square root both sides. And what do we get?
Plus or minus 4i.
Plus or minus, very good, and then 4i. Because square root of 16 is 4, and the square root of the negative gives us I. Any questions? Now, similar to what I did yesterday, I'm actually going to change the last problem that we're doing. And we are going to do one of them from your homework. So after we do this, you can just copy down the answer to your homework. We're going to do number 42 from your homework. Number 42 from your homework is 2x squared plus 1 equals 0. So how would you start this? Subtract 1 to the other side. So we get 2x squared equals negative 1. Now what? Divide by 2, divide by 2. And this one's different because negative 1/2 is not, or 1/2 is not a perfect square. So, but we're still going to follow the same method. I'll show you though. So we'll square root both sides. Gonna run out of room. And that gives us that x equals plus or minus, and since we can't take the square root of 1/2, we're going to write it as square root of the top and square root of the bottom. So square root of negative 1 over square root of 2. You can do that. You can break square roots of fractions into top and bottom. Well, what is the square root of negative 1? I. Very good, Logan. So it's I over square root of 2. Now, kind of like grammar rules in English class, math has kind of grammar rules too. And one of those is that you cannot leave a square root in the bottom of a fraction. But they're fairly simple, if you can remember, to move them out of the denominator. What you do is you take the whatever the denominator is, so here it's square root of 2, and we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by that square root of 2. So multiply that by square root of 2, and multiply this by square root of 2.
The bottom just cancels out.
I'm running out of room.
Yeah, so what we did was we multiplied by 1. We just made that value of 1 look the way we wanted it to. So on top you get plus or minus I square root of 2. And what's square root of 2 times square root of 2? On the bottom. It's like square root of 2 squared.
Just 2.
It's just 2. So that is your answer. I guess x equals that. That's your answer. So anytime you have something that isn't a perfect square and you have a square root in the bottom, just multiply the bottom by that same thing, multiply the top by it, and it'll turn into a real number on the bottom. Any questions? No? Okay. Then go ahead and do your homework. You've got 18 problems, but we just did one of them. So make sure you write that one down, but you only have 17. Number 42. This was number 42.